Hello and welcome to the webinar series. Here at Tuttle we are hosting Know Our Partners by Tuttle Studio. I'm Saduddin Soni, Digital Strategy Manager here at Tuttle Studio. We have a special guest today from one of our valuable partners, Microsoft for Startups. I would like to invite and come up on stage. Please, I welcome Michael Smith. Hello.
Morning, afternoon, which is it? How are you?
Yeah, I'm fine. How are you doing?
Yeah, good. It's great to be here. Yeah.
Yeah. So today's session will be interactive and thoughtful as well. We would like to address some issues and some questions we would ask. So first question, please, can you tell us a bit about yourself and your role at Microsoft for Startups?
Sure. So I'm Michael. I'm the GM for Microsoft for Startups APAC, which includes Bangladesh. That's why we're here. And I run a team of people that are just really trying to help startups in the region grow with Microsoft. And what is kind of new for Microsoft, about a year old, is this program called Founders Hub, which I'll walk people through it today. Plus, there's my team, which really just didn't start till July. And we're just really trying to reset the awareness of Microsoft in the startup community in the region, both from the programs we have to the people and to the help that we can provide startups that are trying to grow, who want to grow with Microsoft. So that's the gist, and happy to be here. And yeah, we can keep this as open as you want to make sure we get all the questions answered if there are any.
Sure. We will take some questions from our audience as well. So first thing first, let's have a chit chat. Let's have a discussion of some questions that I would like to have.
Sure.
First thing, what exactly is Microsoft for Startups for new founders,
Yeah.
and how does it support early stage startup founders?
Yep, good. So I'm gonna have some slides for this so that we can kind of make sure people see the benefits, but I'll just answer it easily. So it's a program. You go sign up at startups.microsoft.com. And the way I like to think of it, it's kind of everything that Microsoft has, literally everything, in a cohesive kind of bundled format that's basically essentially mostly for free. So and that would be, it's not just Azure credits for your cloud workloads. It's also GitHub. It's benefits on LinkedIn. It's Visual Studio for development. It's actually all the Microsoft Office stuff. It's Power BI. It's everything. And with that, you basically, are given some either credits or licenses over approximately between a 1 and 2 year period to use all this stuff from Microsoft. And then apart from that, which I'll get into with the slides a little bit, is that there's ability to get tech support, there's mentoring. But the idea here is to give an early stage startup, a technical lead on all the tools and things they need that won't cost them any money, but also to try to figure out what's the best way to use Microsoft to also grow your business. So we kind of put all of it in a box. Obviously, we're a small team, and we can't individually maybe help each and every one of you, but programmatically we try to. But with the relationship with Turtle, in your portfolio companies, if somebody's like, hey, trying to figure this out, just I'll leave in the slide deck some emails. You can ping us, and then we also run like a weekly office hours for the region, so people can join there and ask technical questions either about the program or like what's happening right now is a lot of questions on like ChatGPT, OpenAI.
Right.
We cover the gamut.
Right. So recently I saw the news that Bing is integrated with ChatGPT. So it was an exciting news. And how do you think founders can utilize the ChatGPT right now in order to grow,
Yeah.
in order, you know?
Yeah, the way I think it's early days, and I think it really depends on your business model. But I think what we're generally realizing, and even in my own kind of playing around with things, is it's just like a extra superpower to maybe take tasks and automate them, to create ways to create chat interfaces to a problem. I think it's really dependent on what you do specifically. But the way I like to think of it, if you just take anybody's business model and then you add to it that you might be able to automate something, you might be able to, streamline a process, it's just going to help your business move faster. And I think, the way I like to think of it is you have startup A over here not using open AI stuff at all. Okay, they'll still have a viable business model, but will they be able to be, cheaper, better, faster than startup B, who says, hey, I'm going to do the same thing you do, but I'm going to automate some processes. I'm going to make this thing work with like my customer service is going to be a chat bot to try to like service you faster. So I just think a lot of startups are going to have to look at these two things and say, can I build a business better, faster, and align to the customer needs with these technologies better or not? And I think for most people, in a lot of cases, the answer would be yes. But
Right.
then, what is the right way to use it? Because you have everything from image generation, you have chat stuff, you have the voice synthesized stuff, you have the ability to synthesize data and kind of spit out a summary. I think people are just starting to wrap their heads around, how does this work for my startup? But what we see is just a lot of people asking these questions. And I think startups are like the people that can use this stuff the fastest. I think enterprises are calling too, but it's going to take them some time to wrap their head around, like, how do I use this in my enterprise? But a lot of that's happening as well.
Right. So I saw a new project called Valley from Microsoft. Right on GitHub, I see the repository, and that was a voice kind of thing. So if I want to generate my own voice with AI, I can do that. Right. So it's coming. So if
Yes.
we look
Yeah.
at the start,
Basically, there's tools to like listen to your voice, synthesize it, and then you use that to say
exactly.
something or do
Think
something.
about
Yeah,
the
it's pretty
audiobook
crazy.
platform. Yeah,
Yeah.
we have a portfolio company, Shunboi in Bangladesh, that is a audiobook platform in Bangladesh. So if we can replace the narrator that give voice for audiobook, that would be awesome, right? So there are a lot
Yeah.
of opportunities. So now
And I think and I think it's just everybody's got to kind of go through the. I look at my business and then I see what pieces of this can I use this technology to build something better. And then
right,
I reckon that it's literally every startup, but it'll take some time for people to figure that out. But the people asking it about it is crazy. It's a lot, right?
right, it's a lot. So, one of our audience commented and asked the questions. He wanted to know the benefits of Microsoft Azure.
Just like as a general question, I mean, it's. I mean, look at like I kind of say like pick your poison. Like what like I think you could kind of take any of the clouds and do what you want to do with them, right? So I think what we like about Azure is just its integration to GitHub to Visual Studio. A lot of people find that it's a little bit easier to manage it. There's actually a mobile app for the administration console.
Right,
So it's a different theology around kind of how security is done versus the way some of the others. But it really depends what your familiarity is with these things. But we put a lot of work in kind of trying to make Azure easy to manage and integrate a lot of the services. And then now with all the work around like GitHub and Copilot and being able to easily put that on Azure, we think we think the game is about kind of the end to end orchestration, not necessarily just Azure on its own, but the fact that you're writing code, and now you have GitHub Copilot, you're deploying the code. We're just trying to make all that simpler to do. And then what we're doing from, what we think is going to be really exciting is just the fact that we're taking all the OpenAI services and putting them into Azure as what we call Azure OpenAI. And I think if you're watching the news, it was just this morning we shipped Azure OpenAI Chat GPT in
right,
in Azure, right? So
right.
so it's just we look at this stuff as kind of core cloud competency, but layering on the AI stuff natively inside Azure is what we think is going to be one of the really major benefits of Azure going forward.
Right, right. That will be a game
Yeah.
changer. I personally used Azure once for my project. So yeah, Azure is really easy to navigate. I used Google Cloud, I used Amazon Web Services as well, but Azure was really fun to play with. So now I would ask a question that is, what advice would you give to startups looking to maximize the benefits for Microsoft for startups, and what advice would you give to early stage founders when they are getting started?
Yeah, so I think as far as like from a founders at Microsoft perspective, I think what we're trying to say is, hey, we're going to give you everything, pick and choose what you think is useful to you as a startup, but we're really trying to give you all the pieces you would need, even Teams, so you can do your own chat sessions and run conferences, all the way to like you could even do it as your mail service because there's M365 bundled in it. We're really just trying to say, hey, look, Microsoft has always been mostly a platform tools company, and we're just, and if you know Microsoft's how many years old, that's how it's all started. It was programming tools, it was operating systems. So I think in working with the startup program, I think we're just kind of getting back to our roots, if you ask me, but we just haven't done a good job with startups. And now we're kind of getting back to what you know us for is tools, developer tools, platforms, services. You build something with them, you ship them to your customers. But what we're trying to do with the program is largely lower the cost for you of the platform and those services while you're in the program practically to zero. Even in Founders Hub right now, there's OpenAI benefits inside the Founders Hub package. So if you are interested in OpenAI and want to kick the tires, you're going to get those benefits via Founders Hub. So the idea
Wow.
there is just to kind of bring the cost of you building your startup from a technical perspective down to zero until you can figure everything out and make some money. I think my general advice to founders is kind of, I've had the same kind of deck. We could do this another time where I kind of do my how to be a startup and how to be a founder. But one of the things I always kind of put in there is it's a marathon, not a sprint, and you're really
Right.
going to have to craft a long-term view of what you're going to do, right? And you're going to
Exactly.
have up and down cycles. You're going to have good times. You're going to have bad times. You're going to have days where the capital came in. You're going to have days where you're trying to figure out how to make payroll. That's the game, right? And you
Right.
have to just realize it's going to take a while. And I think I always tell people, stop reading all the news and the hustle kind of things because they're just going to depress you because you think like you have
Yeah.
one coffee meeting and you raise your venture fund and so I tell people that like it's just not that way, right? The reality is it will take time, and that's why I would say it's a marathon, not a sprint, and you just need to know that when you're starting. And I think if you put yourself in that mindset when you start, it'll make things a lot not simpler, but it gives you a frame of mind that like don't get so freaked out when you have your ups and downs because that's part of the journey.
Right. 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 Absolutely. So another question is, as an emerging market, what's your thought on the potential of Bangladesh?
Sure. Yeah. So the funny thing is like in my last job, which is one of the cloud companies you mentioned, I also had Bangladesh, and it's very interesting for me because I think if you look, the funny thing for me is I'm kind of like I've always been a Southeast Asia person, but what's funny is the Southeast Asian cloud companies generally cover Bangladesh in their markets. Rather than it being maybe part of the India territory, which some do, and things like that. So I've been dealing with Bangladesh for about 4 or 5 years.
Wow.
And I work with, there's an accelerator in Singapore called Accelerating Asia.
Right.
That's where ShopUp came from,
Yeah.
which I think everybody knows who ShopUp is.
Yeah.
So, I actually think from a core markets perspective in ASEAN, of course, it's Singapore, it's Indonesia, it's that kind of thing. But then a lot of us in a strategy role are always like, well, what's the other country you would bet on that's in this, I don't say ASEAN, but like I said, in the cloud companies, generally Bangladesh is considered part of the ASEAN orgs because of location. And that, in fact, we also had Pakistan before. So I'm always kind of like, I got to deal with ASEAN, but I got all these little, like what I call periphery countries, and there needs to be kind of, some strategy to it, right? We can't just do everything. And what I've always noticed for myself when I really crunch the numbers from like demographics to infrastructure to the fact that there's even a Turtle Venture Studio, the fact that there's a few VCs, and then add to it kind of the universities and what's going on from a technical perspective. Um, just purely doing it from like, let's crunch numbers and let's kind of look at the capital and look at the startups. Bangladesh always pops up. And I think it's always kind of punched above its weight in that regard from a startup perspective. And I don't see that changing anytime soon. And I think it's got all the technical talent. It's starting to get what I call the startup infrastructure, like Turtle Venture Studio. Um, and you guys want even more people like you and competitors because that's what's going to drive the market, right?
Right.
Where 4 or 5 years ago there was none of that, right?
Right.
So I really think it's happening. I think you see some really interesting startups. I think you see how ShopUp has kind of paved the way for people to really build something big, get some big funding, even do geographic stuff. Yeah, it's super exciting, and I think for some people maybe you always live in this place where you're trying to get somewhere else, or you're trying to get a career in another country. Like that happens. But I think if you're in Bangladesh and you're in the startup scene, you should stay put, and you should really just like ride it, because I think what you're going to see over the next decade is just the strength of the Bangladesh ecosystem continually improving. And
Right.
I think just let's hope we all pray for just continued economic and like political stability, and that'll give the startup ecosystem like its wings. But super exciting place. It's great to see you guys having a venture studio like devoted to it. And I'm just a big fan. I hope for COVID we couldn't travel, so now that we're past that,
Right.
I'm hoping in the next year when there's like some travel budgets returning to big tech to kind of make it out, and we'll go and visit the studio. So
Right. So Turtle Studio is the first of its kind in Bangladesh,
yeah,
right? So there is no other venture studio here. So the concept
nope,
is really, really vague in our country. People don't know what is actually venture studio. Well, I want to clarify that a venture studio is a model. It's not a traditional VC. We work as a co-founder to a team of founders,
yeah,
right? So that's what the benefits come from. So they can work with us. They can build their product with us. They can do literally everything. We pitch on behalf of them as well. So this is the beauty of venture studio. So we build them products. So Turtle Venture Studio, it's a first of its kind in Bangladesh. So how do you think Bangladeshi startup can benefit from this unique model, and what role you see Microsoft for startups playing in this ecosystem?
yeah. So I think generally speaking, like if you look at any ecosystem, as I would call it, you're gonna find that like there's there's a lot of components needed to an ecosystem, right? So that's the way I think about it. And hold on, I'm sharing a link really quick. Like, so if you think of an ecosystem needs like um, venture capital, an ecosystem needs venture studios, an ecosystem needs angel investors.
Right.
All of this kind of is like the building blocks of an ecosystem. And like I've been in the Singapore ecosystem for about 15 years. And when I started, there wasn't any venture studios. There was this thing called JFDI, which was an accelerator, and it was one of the first ones. It's actually not around anymore. The um, there was like some angels, but not at what I would call an active angel network. Then there was, the venture capitalists started coming in, both the regional and the local. So you kind of have these building blocks to building a startup ecosystem. And I think, clearly Bangladesh is, I wouldn't say just starting, but it's early days, right? There's not a lot of venture capitalists that are just for Bangladesh. Like you said, you're the only venture studio. I know there's some active angel investors because I've interacted with them. And like I said before, like Bangladesh needs four more venture studios. Not, and I wish you guys all the success, but from an ecosystem, you want more than one, right? I mean, in
Right.
Singapore, there's probably 50 venture studios, right?
Right.
It's not a competition. It's just you want more startups, so you need. So all these building blocks are super important, and I would say Bangladesh is not really at the bottom of the building blocks. It's probably on the second phase, and I think any sort of early stage program is needed to kind of help create some space and some success to then get to the next phase of an ecosystem, which would probably be more studios, probably venture capital funds that start being just for Bangladesh. I suspect there's probably a professional angel network, but it would be bigger. All these things are really important to like an ecosystem that, in all fairness, probably takes 10 years to develop, right? It's not going to happen overnight. So I would say it's an integral part of it. and it's very important for startups. And I think the success rate of studios is generally pretty good versus the success rate of just actively funding a startup that has no help per se, right? So I think it's a very integral part of the ecosystem, and it's definitely like a core building block to building a long-term ecosystem.
Right. So one of our audience commented
Yeah,
and
I see
asked,
the
yeah,
they're odd questions.
yeah, maybe
How
they,
does revenue model on Azure? It's really simple. We buy machines and then we rent them out, right? That's the cloud revenue model. It's the same for Google, AWS, everybody, right? How
right,
are the employees motivated to work? I'm an amazing boss. No, I'm kidding. It's like any other organization, right? It's you're paid, and then if you're in sales, you're paid on exceeding your targets, right? That's the general principle. And then what are the types of startups Microsoft? I wouldn't say we're favorable to some. I don't think we're really in the mode of picking the best startups. We're offering all startups a unique program and access. Now, obviously, some startups might work better with us, or if you're an AI startup and want to open AI, we look like a pretty good partner. If you're just building an e-commerce site, you might say I could use any cloud. So we're not. I don't think we're in the business of trying to say something's better than the other thing. But I would say more importantly, we would partner more at the studio level, like we're doing now, and say, hey, we're here to help the studio help their portfolio. Their portfolio is going to be a mix of a lot of different startups,
right,
and you're picking them, not us, but we're helping you. So that's usually more of the model. But the program's for everybody. The Microsoft for Startups is for any startup. It doesn't matter what vertical or type of startup you are.
right. So Venture Studio can play an important role here because we
Very.
actually filter startups. We get a lot of applications, to be honest, and we had to screening that applications, and we see how much potential the founder have, and how they can get off the ground with our help. So we actually assess every application we get. Currently, we are running our cohort for this season, the cohort one, so where we will be funding $125,000 fund, where in kind fund is to the $25,000 of worth of service we will be giving providing, and $100,000 fund we will give in cash. Okay, so this is a good start for a startup, early stage startup, to be honest, here in
Yep.
Bangladesh. So the startup ecosystem is flourishing in Bangladesh, and the economy is growing. So I hope that we will be near to like our neighboring country, India. They're doing amazing, right? In terms of fintech, in terms of healthcare, health tech, food tech, agriculture, agri tech. So we are getting startup applications from these sectors, these industries. So how do you think these industry, our startups can revolutionize this industry? Do you think we can do that?
You mean like your specific industries in Bangladesh? Yeah. So I think I think with a lot of startups, there's always this, what do I go after? I think the interesting thing in Bangladesh is the country itself is big enough with enough, let's not say problems, challenges, that
Right,
there's room for startups to kind of what I think is go deep on something in your country and own it, right? Like try to
right,
dominate it, like what you see Shop Up doing and stuff like that. Versus, if you took at some of the Southeast Asian countries, the country in and of itself may not be big enough to really provide a market where you just said, hey, I'm this one thing only in Singapore. It might not be big enough. So then you see a lot of what we call regional startups, right?
all
Um,
right,
I think Bangladesh has this unique opportunity for startups that they can kind of own a thing. Look at Patal, look at ShopUp, look at these ones that are like, I'm all about this thing and I'm gonna own it. And Bangladesh is big enough, and I might not need to ever expand outside of Bangladesh. And I think that there's going to be a unique opportunity in just as Bangladesh modernizes as a country, all the little places that even working with the government or public sector, there's all these places that probably a problem could be solved, that
right,
there's a unique revenue opportunity, and that would allow basically for you to build a very successful startup by doing X, right?
Right.
And that's what I think is great about Bangladesh. I think it's early days. Of course, there's already the ride sharing and the food thing. I mean, I realize all these things, but I would bet in fintech, there's a long ways to go. Like if you look at, even in the Singapore ecosystem, some 15 years on, the majority of funding is still going to fintechs. Fintechs are still being created and they're still making money because, what is one unique thing to every human on the planet? Managing, transacting, or dealing with their money. And I would bet that like in Singapore, I don't know what you guys have in Bangladesh, but like in Singapore, I can send somebody money with their phone number, right? And
Right.
it's bank to bank.
Yeah.
You have
We have,
that? Is it,
yeah,
yeah.
we have
But
the
it,
mobile
but
financial system like Bikash,
but
you
is
know,
it okay? But it's a private company though, right? Like it's
and it's a unicorn, the one and
yeah.
only unicorn in our country.
Yeah, yeah. So I think, and I know everybody uses it, but what I'm saying that's kind of unique to Singapore is this is just built into the banks. So all of
Right.
the banks have a way for me to send money to each other with a phone number, and there's no fees.
Right.
Where if you go and look at, say, Indonesia, the only way you can do money transfers is something like Bcash, but not Bcash, but some equivalent, or all these startups. So
Right.
I think that you kind of see these inflection points where only the private companies can really go handle some of the early hard problems because they won't be solved by the government or the banks or the public institutions, right? So
Right.
if you look at fintech, if you look at property, if you look at paper and transactions, all of these things will take some form of digitization over time. Um, so yeah, I just think that like there's a lot of open space, right? And I think it's a big enough country with a healthy enough economy that a startup can say, look, I'm going to hunker down on problem A in this country and I'm going to win it. And it's going to be very favorable, right? Like, and that's what's great about, I think, the opportunity right now.
Yeah, and we have a vision actually. We have a vision to scale our startups globally. So our tagline is fostering Bangladeshi startups go global, right? So what founders actually facing right now in our country within corporation. So if I want to do a business globally, that's not possible right now, but I think it will be possible if the concerned authority hears us. So, for example, in my cases, I'm a founder of a UK incorporated company called Scoop C, which is a print-on-demand company, some sort of like Redbubble. Anyway, so I had to incorporate my company in order to conduct business in the European market, right? So
Yeah.
why should I incorporate my business outside Bangladesh? That's the point. I wanted to incorporate it here and do my business globally, but I couldn't do because I didn't have the payment gateway I needed, like Stripe,
Yeah.
like Wise, like PayPal.
Yeah, it's a problem. I mean, you can see like I think ShopUp and most of those companies are all Singapore private limited companies with Bangladesh operating arms, right? Like, yeah, it's a known problem. I don't think. Look, I think the governments, you know, take time to kind of move to where digital is taking everybody. I'm pretty sure 10 years ago there was never this thought that a Bangladeshi company would need a payment gateway in Europe, right? It wasn't even a thought process, right? So, and I think, to be honest with you, if you go back to Singapore 15, 16 years ago, it wasn't easy for Singapore startups either then, right? Like they could incorporate in Singapore easily, but they didn't necessarily get international things. You know, so Singapore slowly, actually probably pretty quickly compared to other ecosystems, but over many, many years, keeps kind of solving these whatever you call these infrastructure problems
Right.
to try to make it easier for startups to be born, be successful, and be global. It'll just take Bangladesh time to do that, right? I mean, it's. But I think they know this, and I think they realize that if you don't do this, they kind of lose these battles to other countries, right? But if you think about like even Singapore is kind of so streamlined in this regard that there's even an agency that works with Singapore companies just for their overseas expansion because they want Singapore companies to take over the world, right? So so even Singapore like had to solve these problems, and they weren't solved 20 years ago. They just started getting solved like 15 years ago, and now they're just we take it for granted. So I think that these type of things will take time, but I think the startups will obviously probably have to move faster than the regulations per se, but the government will kind of learn from these things to realize that yeah, we need to enable these startups to be Bangladeshi companies with the powers and legal things that they need to be successful even past our own borders.
Right.
But it takes time, right? But I feel like I've even seen dialogue on this, and I know that like it's something that's well known, but it takes time. But I think startups help lead the way, so to speak, or kind of shine a light on these problems, and that's good, right? Because your mom and pop shops or your old government things, they're not going to shine a light on this problem because they don't have this problem.
Right.
So, and that's what's unique to startups.
Right. Absolutely. So, what do you think about Bangladeshi startup ecosystem going in 5 or 10 years from now? So, where do you see our ecosystem?
I think it's just going to have to keep like getting these building blocks, right? And I think everybody's kind of shown that it can create unicorns. There's funding for it, but I still think the surface area is still just a few large startups dominating, right? I think the future is going to have to be hundreds of startups that show the light, like receive funding, and then I think the other kind of part of any ecosystem is eventually exits where these companies get bought. And I think in Bangladesh, that's yet to be seen. Like, what is that? Is that large Bangladeshi companies buying other things? Is it overseas companies buying things? So I think that's one part of it that's still got to evolve because eventually there's exits. And then I think the other problem I think a lot of these places have, and it's probably no different than Singapore, is if you're kind of big enough and you maybe want to go public, where are you going to go public? Is it in Bangladesh? Is it in, is
New
that the
York.
answer? Or is it Singapore? Is it NASDAQ? Like, so all of these ecosystems, like, there's going to be these difficult challenges on the way to really be, something like India or something where you have exits and you have acquisitions and you have people going public. We're not there yet, right? But I think that's going to have to be a part of it. So that's on the other end of the spectrum. On the other end of the spectrum, I'd say is more like the venture studios and just more of them, right? I don't think the country can be successful with one from a pure ecosystem perspective.
Right.
I think you have to see more funding available to Bangladeshi startups, and then just more of a active angels ecosystem. So all the stuff on the getting capital side, on the and I think the other thing you run into is just with any ecosystem is experienced executives, like experienced founders. All this kind of takes time to develop. Where a startup gets bought and they create some wealth potentially, and they create new founders to go do new startups. That's all part of this cycle of life sort of thing that hasn't played out yet. It's too early, but I think that's what's going to happen. But I think the fact that you see startups from Bangladesh in regional accelerators, like Accelerating Asia, for example, just kind of shows you that the ecosystem's starting to create these founders. They're going overseas, they're getting experience, then they come back and they build these things. So I think the cycle looks good, but I think the kind of global, let's say, inflationary high interest rate crisis right now is going to
Right.
kind of be an impediment to everybody experiencing this growth as fast as maybe they wanted to, right?
Right. Yeah. So, I want to ask you a question. Do Microsoft have some sort of fund to support early stage startups?
Not really. We're not a venture capitalist. I think that like what our give is this program because you get up to like 300 and something thousand USD in credits and services. So you can kind of consider that us funding you. I think generally speaking, the cloud companies are not active capital investors. They have funds, right? Microsoft has a fund, Google has a fund, but we're not out there trying to invest in startups because that's what venture capitalists do. And I think it then becomes confusing to like, if I invested in you, why didn't I invest in him? And like, okay, I'm not interested in Microsoft because you didn't invest in me. we couldn't possibly invest in everybody. It doesn't make sense. So what we usually build is a program that's the investment is credits and time and effort, less capital, because we think the capital markets are better investors than corporate.
Right. So thank you so much. Finally, is there
Sure.
anything you would like to share with our audience or
Yeah,
any
yeah. Let
closing
me. I
comments?
just want to do a few slides. Do we have a little bit of time? I just want to
Sure,
make sure people kind of see the top line benefits a little bit. Let's see if this
sure.
works. Oh, I have no slides. How do I do it? Your computer. Let me see. Oh, upload a file. Let's see if this works. Let me try real quick.
Sure.
I thought I could share screen, but I cannot.
Yes, you can share your screen.
You can? Because I
Yeah,
do
you can.
present and it wants a file. Oh, share screen. Thank you. I just
Yeah.
missed it. All right. Oh, it's gonna want me to start over, huh? Let me see if this works real quick. Oh, I have to reopen. If I window, let's see if this works. Is it sharing? No, it won't share, right?
No, he didn't share. You have to share it and present. You have to hit
Yeah,
present.
it wants me to restart. Let me just see if I can do the file version of it real quick, and if that works or not.
Sure.
Public assets. Uploading. I think it's working. Give it a sec. So I'll just run through this. I don't want to do a long presentation, but I want to make sure people generally understand what we're shipping, and then
Sure.
processing. See how quick this is. I think it's crunching it on a server somewhere. Yeah.
Yeah, sometimes error occurs. It's
I know it wouldn't
okay.
let me share screen because it said it. I don't have the app doesn't have permission, so I'll tell that. It's processing the deck. Let's see if this works.
Sure.
Have you done it this way before? Is it normally fast? Let's try. It said it
Yeah.
takes a PowerPoint file. So let's see what is going on. I'm just trying to pull up just some top line information. But in the meantime, let me just do some highlights. So if you're interested in the program, it's startups.microsoft.com. You use your LinkedIn profile to log in because that's how we're kind of doing verification. So we encourage you to do this as a founder. Even if you're on other clouds, it's not a don't come near us. We would still give you this program and you can check it out because there's other freebies in there than just the Azure stuff because there's GitHub and things like that. So what we do is, you sign up to this program, you get accepted at different levels into it depending on the stage of your startup. It's all free. There's nothing to be paid. And then the other thing I run is kind of some weekly office hours. There we go. So you can see it now? Yay, cool. That worked. All right, so I'll just do this quick. So that's our email if you want to get in touch with us. Startups.apac@microsoft.com if you have questions. The site for applying to Founders Hub is startups.microsoft.com. And then there's an office hours in there where we're just doing weekly office hours as kind of an AMA, like you're having problems with something or you want to get some help. I'll run through it really quick just to kind of give you a top line. So you get 150,000 in Azure credits. You don't get them all at once, by the way. You get them at different levels and you have to consume them. You get access to GitHub, Microsoft M365. So you have your email and Teams and all that. And then now we have all the different OpenAI benefits directly as well. So this is literally the only way on the planet to get at OpenAI for essentially free. So these are kind of just a thing to show you all the different logos. A lot of people are just, hey, I'm not a team shop, I'm not an office shop, but I want Azure, I want GitHub, great. But a lot of people use LinkedIn, and there's actually some LinkedIn benefits in the program as well. But this is kind of the main thing. If you're just a startup that's kind of an MVP and you're not really a company, you're going to get the 1K thing. But just be clear, if you can consume that and you can kind of give us some of your company's docs, you can get to the next level. Generally speaking, if you're a legit startup and you fill out the application correctly and we can see the information, we'll drop you in at 5K mark. That means 5K of Azure. What you do is you consume it, click the button, you get to 25K. If you consume your 25K, you click the button to unlock the rest of it. That's how you get up to 150 with around about a two year
Sure.
expiration on them. Um, then we have all these kind of what we call partner things. So we got LinkedIn, we got like a bunch of interesting products that you may or may not use. There's Stripe stuff, and then there's what's really hot is all the OpenAI stuff.
Yeah,
Um,
I use Bubble
but these
personally.
are all yeah, but these are all the basic levels. So this is all I wanted to share with you. It's sign up for free. If you have problems with it, there's that email. You can share the email. But the idea here is like just kind of building a stack for everybody to get at Microsoft as an early stage startup without any cost to you. And then in this program, there is tech support, there's mentoring, and then there's just the office hours where we can help point you to things or try to solve problems for you. And then, if you're really stuck on something or need some help, or you're really trying to build some stuff, you can definitely reach out to us and we'll try to help you at the architecture level as well. I think the other thing we can do, Saad, is just run some office hours for you guys. If there wants to be like an Azure session or an OpenAI session, just tell us what you guys need that might help.
Right.
Cool. That's it.
Yeah, thank you so much. And I appreciate
Yeah.
your time and your support.
Cool.
Thanks a lot.
Yeah. Anytime. Yeah.
Yeah, hope
Awesome.
we do webinar again with some
Yep.
great stuff.
And
So
I'll send you a PDF of the deck so you can share it with people that has all the information in it.
sure thing. So have a great
Awesome.
day.
Yeah. And good luck with everybody. Good luck with
Yeah.
your startups. Yep.
So
Take
yeah,
care.
take care.
Bye.
Bye.